Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg, and this is It's Okay to Be Old, a show about all things aging well. My guest today is Julian Schlossberg, and he's the author of Try Not to Hold It Against Me, A Producer's Life, a must read and now a must listen for film, television, and theater enthusiasts alike. It's a one of a kind autobiography by one of entertainment's true insiders. He also has an interesting foreword by Academy and Tony Award winning Elaine May. Schlossberg's memoir tells us the story of a boy from the Bronx who made it to Broadway and beyond. Welcome, Julian.
Thank you. I'm so glad to know that I made it from the Bronx to Broadway.
Yes, yes. Now, I invited you on the show today because I love hearing stories about how one actually comes to where they are today. You were a producer of over 60 plays, movies, TV specials, including Tony Award winning shows. And what I love about your story as a producer is that it's widely misunderstood by the general population about what you do. So tell us your story.
Well, as you know, Patricia, when you see the credits, you see already 400 producers listed, but there's really only a couple and often just one. And I was what's known as a lead producer. What a producer does is find the property, hire the director, work with the writer, get involved in the casting, raise the money, and then get involved in the marketing and selling of that product. So it's a very kind of a full-time job when
Yeah.
you take on a project. And that's one of the reasons I'm always hesitant to take anything on unless I fall in love. Not like it, I have to fall in love with it because I'm going to be with it a long time.
So this is that is interesting because that I even misunderstood the role of a producer. And the producer isn't just somebody who brings money to the table and funds it, although that's a part of it too, to get the
So
credit. What I
those
think is sad, Julian, is everybody wants their name on something today, right? Yeah, you can speak to that.
I was just going to say that years ago when I started, they used to be called angels in the theater. They had nothing to do with the project
Mhm.
except well, there are
Yeah,
still people getting a producer credit that have nothing to do with the project, but they write the check. And
right.
so you said, Patricia, they want their names there. They want to come to opening night or the premiere, and for that, they're paying. But they have no creative input 90% of the time, which is
And,
just as well.
and is that something that is in more recent years? I mean, how did has this always been the case that you had to kind of find non insiders to come and help you pay for the project?
Yes, that's always been the case. There's
Okay.
all the need to get people to finance. Now, if you're lucky enough or have enough credits enough, or more importantly, have a star in your pocket, you'll be able to get funding very easy from maybe HBO or Netflix or Amazon or so many places now, but you have to have the goods, meaning the big name, not just a good name, but a big name before they're going to write a check so fast.
So let's go back 60 years ago and tell us, how did you even get into this? Because it's the age old story of breaking into entertainment. How does that go?
Well, how it went in my case was
Uh-huh.
that I grew initially with radio. And Patricia, what a gift that was because you didn't have it spoon fed. You had to imagine it. You had to use your imagination. And so, what you found out, maybe you were on the range with the Lone Ranger, or you were walking down the steps to Jack Benny's vault. And what you conjured up, what you were able to figure in your imagination was so exciting. And then I'm lucky enough at, I don't know, 8, 9 years old, television comes in. The idea that in your own home, you could see variety shows or baseball games or movies. This was unbelievable that you didn't have to leave your house. So I would say that I was bitten by that bug of show business. And I found living in the Bronx that shows were being done in Manhattan, kind of a subway a stop or two away. And I would go down to see the live shows, the radio shows. Arthur Godfrey and his sister Kathy Godfrey had a separate show. Mike Wallace from 60 Minutes had a show with his then wife, Buff Cobb. So it was different. And what I would do, every week I would go to see the Perry Como dress rehearsal. There was a way to get tickets to see the dress rehearsal. And then I'd run on the train to get back home to watch it as it got broadcast to see what were the changes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was clearly hooked. My mother was not thrilled about this. She
Yeah.
decided show business was not where I should be going. And I made the mistake of bringing Variety, the newspaper about the business, into the home where it became banned. I couldn't bring it home any longer. But of course, I read it on the outside. So that was that.
And so you just kind of, pulled yourself up and went down there and just reveled in all this and fell in love at a very young age. And so what was your first job starting out getting into the industry?
I started at the ABC network. And at that point, there were three networks, NBC, CBS, and ABC. But at that point, ABC was like the fifth network because CBS and NBC murdered them. And
Mm-hmm.
so let's say, as it did happen in October of 1965, the Pope came to New York City. All the shows were knocked off for that particular great event. Well, CBS and NBC wrote a credit right back to the sponsors. ABC said, don't give them the money back. Get a make good. And a make good was to take the commercial that was going to play in the show that the Pope has knocked off and put it in another show. They just didn't want to give back the money. And
Right.
so I
Right.
got involved in that. That was my first job, trying to keep the money at ABC that needed it at that time.
And the sponsors bought into that. They allowed it to be aired at a different time and it all worked out for everybody. Mm-hmm.
Not all of them. You
Yeah.
know, maybe you'd have to give them two McHale's Navy or one
Yes.
few or whatever. You just found a place to do it. But no, some demanded the credit. But most of them didn't want to do the paperwork. That was the real thing. It was a lot of paperwork to do it to the sponsor and write so they just said, oh, okay, put me in another show.
So you were there at a very magical time because I can tell you that from my parents' I was born in 1960, and I can tell you from my parents' generation. Like you say, they went from listening to the radio. Television was an incredible luxury when it first came out. People don't realize that. Not everybody had a television set. It wasn't like you could walk now into a store and buy a 56-inch screen and everybody can afford it. Even people who can't afford it have one. And that transition to actually seeing the images on TV, and it was black and white. I sound like an old lady when I say that. And I remember the three channels and PBS, and then the TV going off at 12 midnight because things were not aired all night long. Nobody sat up 24 hours a day watching movies like they do today. But do you think that took away some of the magic of having to go to a theater, going to a Broadway show, going to the movies, and now it's in your home? How do you feel that the effect that it had on society?
I think it's been a terrible effect, but that's my opinion. And you start out with theater, where I've done a lot of work, and audiences used to be engaged. They weren't
Right.
just back and saying, show me, do me, let
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
We're engaged with the actors in the show. They're not that way anymore. It's just not that way. And that's television, what television has done. In motion pictures, you go to the theater and people start going on their iPhones and start talking to a friend while they're in the movie theater. I mean, it's so discourteous to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I like in the Muppets, remember Waldorf and Astoria? They
Yes.
come complaining away. But it's true. It changed theater and it changed movie-going habits, as did COVID, for example. I mean, theaters were doing pretty well before COVID, but then they learned the audience about streaming and not have to get in a babysitter. And so we have all in this particular time have lived through enormous changes,
Mhm.
enormous.
Mhm.
And, now AI is going to knock us on our ear as well. So it's, I guess, if you can't beat them, you try to join them.
The best you can. I want to go back and ask you in the early days. Now you're a producer. That means you're casting, you're trying to manage the money, you're trying to manage the behind the scenes people, the from the cameramen to the stage people to the set directors, and everybody's got an ego and everybody's got a personality, and you're managing it. Everybody's coming at you 90 miles an hour all day long. I want to know, how did you, what was the visceral reaction to people when they come in? What made you choose? There had to be 1,000 girls that are beautiful with black hair and wanted to star in the part. There had to be a million cameramen or set directors, stage managers. How did you know who to choose, especially early on? Is it just pure gut instinct? Was it the resume? Because nowadays, everybody's doing everything on their own. Everyone's calling themselves a producer. Everyone's calling themselves an actress, a TV host, a star. Please, I mean, anybody can say that, right? I'm an influencer, and I try not to use that language in what I do. But what was in the early days? What were the things that stood out with people that made you choose them? Because it was so much more special then.
Well, the theater, it's different for theater, television, and motion picture.
Mm-hmm.
But you look for your director. Your director, you may own the ship. He's the captain,
Got it.
and she is the captain. And so what you want to do is to try to hire someone that you think has the same vision that you do of the piece you're talking about. So you go over the play, you interview the director, you certainly know his past. I don't think I've ever hired a first-time director. I don't think I have. And
Mm-hmm.
if I have to look, it would be because they were an actor. So at least I knew they knew enough about what theater was about. And the interesting thing about theater, and we'll get to the other two quickly, but the interesting thing about theater, there are fine actors who can't do theater. They can't project. They spend so much time on a set, on television, or in movies that when it comes to being 8 times a week to be able to do this performance to 1,400 people, they just can't do it. And then we find people getting mic'd, and nothing upsets me more than if I have to mic an actor. Thank goodness, it's almost really rare.
Mm-hmm.
Motion motion picture, and in theater you have 4 weeks to rehearse. Oh my God, what a luxury. What an incredible ability to be able to see and work and try different things. Television is so quick, demands it to be shown that you really don't have time. Actors will tell me if they're offered something on television or in movies, if they don't have a real handle on the role, they may pass
Okay.
because they have enough time to find it out, you know. So movies also are like a train. When you're producing a movie, if you think you're in charge, you're kidding yourself. That train has taken off. Your job as a producer is not to get derailed. You're just holding on because it has and becomes having a life of its own. And all these disparate people that you mentioned, Patricia, come together, and you hope as a producer to help them become a family. And that's pretty much the job. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you raise the money, got the cast, and etc. You want to keep a happy set or a happy theater. I mean, you just want to try. Can't always succeed because you can get, as they say, a rotten apple in the bunch.
Yes. Yeah. So
But I've only
I want you to share with the audience how hard, which you're doing, each aspect of this is. But everyone thinks it's so. I could do that. I could get in front of a camera and pretend I'm someone else. Talk to us about that.
Well, you might be able to get in front of a camera and depend you're someone else, but you may not be very good at it. People go to school and have lessons and have acting coaches, and it's the most important thing. And anybody who really knows the business will say what you want from an actor is truth. You want to believe what he or she saying. And that's not so easy to get because you're a person. You're Patricia. Now we're asking you to play Helen of Troy. Well, you may have to get rid of some of the background of your life and get into Helen of Troy's body and soul.
And is it the people's motivations to get into the entertainment industry? Because all we see is fame and money and getting bowed down to everywhere they go. And I know there's a lot more to it than that. And nowadays, we used to really look up to and revere and respect. Now it's the incredible criticism and constant bashing of people who are in the public eye, which I think is very sad, unfortunately. And tell us about behind the scenes how some of the actors and producers and directors and people involved in this, what is their perspective of the outside world looking in? They're there to create art. They're not there to create trouble, right?
True. People have said to me that you're so kind and loving to actors, and I am, because what I recognize that other people either don't care to recognize is the fact that the time an actor has become famous, the time they're successful, they've been lied to, they've been treated badly, they've had to come back for a call 5 or 6 times and then lose the role. Mm-hmm. So angry, they're not happy often. And so their behavior is not necessarily what it should be. So I guess I'd say, Patricia, like we say in traffic court, they're guilty with an explanation.
Yes, yes. Okay. That's understandable. Mm-hmm.
I mean, this social media, I guess, has some pluses. I'm not sure what they are, I guess, a little bit. Certainly our ability to communicate today, that's a plus. I didn't have to come to California or whatever. But on the other hand, as you said earlier, people attack people. They attack them online. They attack them in school. Little kids in school are committing suicide because, it's just horrendous. What I find very funny, I will not mention the name, but I had a star whose agent said to me, we must have security on Broadway. When he comes out of that show, that you won't believe he's got 800,000 followers. I said, I don't think he's going to need security. And I don't think 800,000 people are going to show up because it's New York.
Right.
Many of the followers are in Iceland, or Indonesia. Yeah. But okay, first day, I'll do it the first day. First day I did it, 5 people waited for his autograph. That was the end of that. And, that's the kind of nonsense I think you put up with. Right. It doesn't matter how many followers you have. What matters is how many want to come and see you in the theater. How many of those want to wait a half hour, maybe in the cold, to get your autograph. So anyhow, those are the kind of things when you say what you talk about, you say, hey, what do we need this for?
The theater critics, what is your take on the critics who are writing these things about you? Does that keep you up at night when you're producing a play?
It used to. They've lost their power.
Mm-hmm.
The time that the New York Times gave you a bad review, you were done unless you had Hugh Jackman or John Travolta or someone. Yeah. They didn't care. But now, back to social media, they don't matter. They just don't matter. When I was in the business really full time doing 2 and 3 shows a year, we would take out ads in the New York Times. And now maybe there's 3 ads, 4 ads. Right. It doesn't matter. So the critics have lost their power. And for that, I am really happy.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. You started very early on in the genre that is now known today as podcasts and interviews. Movie Talk was your first one. Am I right? Yeah. And you started that while you were still working as an entertainment executive, and you interviewed hundreds of stars. And how'd you get with that? Like, what were you allowed to do in those days? Because now people are clamoring to be interviewed, and you were sought out. So I'm curious to hear how that evolved.
Well, that was something that we used to call radio.
Yes. Okay.
On from 8 to midnight, so it was a lot of
Oh,
hours.
that's a long time. Yeah. Yeah.
How it happened was that I was working at a theater company called the Walter Reed Organization, and they had theaters all over the country. In LA, it was the Music Hall on Wilshire and the
Mhm.
Beverly Canyon and the Granada and the 9,000 building on Sunset. But we were in San Francisco and we were all over New York. And the general manager of the theaters called me one day and he said, "Would you like to do a radio show about entertainment?" I said, "Yeah, but who's going to give me that?" He said, "Well, I have a friend over at WMCA. Let's go over and meet with him." So I met with them and they said, "Okay, would you go on the air with anybody?" I said, "Put me on with anybody. I'm happy to talk." So I went on and I laughed and I cried and I talked stories about what we're doing now. And at the end of that, I came out and they said, "That was really good. Would you do another show?" I said, "No, this is it. If this isn't good enough, this is the best I can do. So
Mhm.
there's no point in doing another one." "Okay, well, we're going to get back to you, but will you change your last name?" I said, "Change my last name? We're in New York City. This
Yeah.
is Wyoming. What the hell? No, I don't want to change my last name." "All right, well, we'll get back to you." And a day or two later, they said, "You're on this Sunday."
Okay.
Wait a second, it's Thursday. I, I've never done a show. So I had to find a guest. I had to kind of think of what I was going to say, but it worked out. And I was on from 8 to 9. And it was also a calling station.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
I got I went to the phones and first voice said, "Julian?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "That was the Bronx Cheer."
Uh,
"Oh, thank you," I say, "for calling." The next person said, "Mr. Schlossberg?" I said, "Yes." And then they said, "F you" to me.
oh boy.
And at this time, Patricia, I'm shaking.
Yeah.
I But after that, in the 9 years that I was on, I never had that kind of phone call. And
Hmm.
yet, first two, I guess that was my baptism of fire.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Started
So
doing,
you are still now. So you came out with a new book, Try Not to Hold It Against Me, A Producer's Life, and it's running around now in the publishing world. And I think that no one gets tired of hearing these stories. It's amazing. And so you are now doing a new podcast or a current
yeah,
podcast, Tales from Hollywood. And tell us about that.
well, it's a little complicated, so thank God I have the time. So,
Okay.
first of all, there are two books. Try Not to Hold It Against Me. The second one is called My First Book, Part Two,
Oh,
which
okay. Okay. Uh-huh.
both of them are on audio. I've
Okay.
recorded them, not an actor. I wanted to, whatever emphasis I wanted to make,
Mhm.
I made. And
Yeah.
so that the podcast itself is Julian Schlossberg's Movie Talk, which is what it was on radio, and it's on Facebook. If you go
Oh,
to Facebook,
okay. Okay.
but lately, because of the name of the show and because of my own age, I've had the following folks. I've had Estelle Parsons, who's 98 years old.
Wow. Wow.
Had Barbara Feldon, who's 93 years old.
Barbara Feldon's 93. Oh my goodness. Get Smart was my favorite show. Yeah.
90, he was 99.
Yeah, 99. Yeah.
And I had Petula Clark,
Wow.
who is also 93. So it looks like I'm getting into the older names, but
Yeah.
and what I've had Woody 3 times, so Woody Allen, but Alec Baldwin's no kid. I'm trying to think of, oh, Amy Schumer, she's young. I'm trying to think of relatively young, but almost the majority of the people are clearly older, which is what interests me.
Well,
You
I'm going to
know,
go to that show because that's my generation. Those are all the stars that were on TV when I was growing up, TV and movies. And I think I'm neck and neck with Alex Baldwin. We're about the same age, give or take. And it's amazing. Now, do you like that feeling like when you're with an older actress or actor or someone who's been around a little bit, do you find the pace is a little bit slower in this frenzied, crazy 90 mile an hour, world we live in? It must be refreshing to speak to someone, an older actor or someone who's been around that can speak more calmly and clearly about their history and what's going on.
Much happier that way.
Yeah,
That's where
yeah, yeah.
um, here comes name dropping, but the two people who signed my wedding license were Elaine May and Marlo Thomas.
Wow, wow.
Witnesses. Marlo's father, Danny Thomas, would come every year, and we'd all get together. And I would go to him, and when I was in my 30s or 40s, and as long as he lived, I go, tell me about Al Jolson, tell me about Eddie Cantor, tell me about Jimmy Durante. I just wanted to hear from them what they had to say.
Right,
And
right.
I realized, Patricia, today, based on the name of your show, that I always was interested in people's biography. I started remembering that my grandmother would read me stories about Franklin Roosevelt or Sigmund Freud. I always wanted to know about people. So I guess that's how I became this interviewer who's probably done over 1,000 interviews.
Good for
So,
you. That's amazing. That is something that I always say, it's okay to be old. It's a little tongue in cheek, but it really is. It's amazing to be here. It's beautiful. Living life to the fullest at any age really, I feel like should be the goal. And that's what I try to promote. And that's exactly what my next thing I was going to say to you is that my work is all about aging well. And it isn't necessarily the nutrition and the fitness and the medical intervention. It's about how does it feel to be the age you are and seeing what the world is like today? How does that feel for you?
well, first of all, it's impossible for me to get my head around the fact that I'm on my way to 85 years old. There's no way I can even figure that because in my head, I was recently bar mitzvahed.
Yes,
So
yes.
that part's gone. But how I feel is that I'm very glad I grew up when I grew up.
Hmm.
And again, not putting down anybody, God knows, have your life. But again, with radio and television, and then watching my so-called career take off, and it was just a wonderful time. And I'm very grateful to it. I have a saying, I don't know how original it is, but I think you'll like it. And that is, it's only work if you don't want to do it.
Right. I love that. It's that you love what you love what you do so much that it's not work, that it's your life. And my father used to say that again. I don't know that he coined it, but my life is my work and my work is my life. He enjoyed it. And
Yeah.
it's this is what I think we're all striving for is that you hear all about the gurus now that are talking about aging well and how to age well and how to live long is finding purpose and finding your passion and doing that. It's all such hard work. I think it really comes down to joy. Is just first of all acceptance. I call it sort of radical acceptance of where you are today and how old you are, and then saying what joy can I find at any level of activity or interest or purpose, whatever it is you find, is if you can find that joy. And I feel so strongly you've such an amazing network of people around you. And one of the things that I always say is the community, having people to talk to, having people to go to. And someone might be the most famous person in the world, but if they're your friend and you can call them with a problem, or you just feel like you need to chat with someone, to have that person there is priceless at any age, but particularly as you get older and as we lose people, it's so important. So, give us a little, a recap of what you have going on and maybe even what's up next.
Well, I thought I had stopped producing, but it's almost like catnip to the cat.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
A wonderful script came across my desk, even though I said don't send it. Uh, he decided to, and it's about Norman Mailer,
Oh,
and um, and it's a play. It's what we call a three-hander. It's three actors, F. Murray Abraham will play Norman Mailer. A
Oh,
wonderful actress named Lila Robbins will play the kind of the antagonist because she's a woman's liberator, and Norman Mailer was a chauvinist beyond chauvinist. So she's taking him on in the play. And the third person is Norman's son. His name is John Buffalo Mailer. He's a real man. This is not made up. And every word that Murray will be speaking that Norman Mailer says was Norman Mailer's voice. There's not a word in that play that Norman Mailer did not speak or write. So he was very, very ahead of his time,
mhm.
prescient, and predicted what could happen to the United States government and democracy. But we won't get into that.
Yeah, yeah. That's amazing. I wish you all the best with it. That's fantastic. So your books are available on Amazon. You have a show on Facebook, and is it streaming anywhere else as well?
It's every podcast place has
All
it. Every
all the usual suspects in the podcast world. Okay, great. Yeah.
round usual suspects, yes.
Yeah. That's what I call them. There's just so much out there, but it all gets distributed. And I think that, you have your audience, the people that want to hear these things and live a little bit of the nostalgia and get away from the noise and hear from, real people with real experience is wonderful. And I want to ask you, you shared with us, how you see the world and what's happened, but, what do you personally like about getting older, if anything?
Like almost everything about it.
Okay, good, good.
I mean, I don't like seated in a very deep couch to get up. I mean, I can't say that. But what I love is that what matters when you're younger often is what people think of you. And maybe it doesn't matter, you get at this point. It doesn't matter. And also, when something comes a little bit awry, instead of it being first run, it could be second or third run. Oh, I had that happen in 1990. I remember that's nothing. I know how to handle that.
Yeah.
So there's so many pluses. But I've worked very hard, Patricia, to stay healthy. I do the treadmill twice a day. I don't smoke. I never smoked. I don't drink. I never drank. So, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, you think you're going to live longer than me?" I said, "No, I live longer than I would have done if I did what you do."
Right, right, right. And
As
yes,
you,
so it's, Mhm.
as you
Getting up
said
every
earlier,
day and facing that is fantastic. Getting up every day and say, what can I do today to make myself feel better is so important. Yeah.
right. As you said earlier, look at Winston Churchill. He did everything wrong,
Yeah.
everything he could do wrong. And now he lived with a lot of pain and gout and all kinds of things, but he lived into his 90s, smoking cigars, drinking all over the place. So a lot of it, as you said, was what you've been given to begin with.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to do is to stay. It's not that I expect it, that I'm trying to live longer. I'm trying to live healthier. I don't want to go to a hospital where I've lost so many friends who went in and never came
I
out.
know.
So
I know. Yeah.
not my plan to be in a hospital. And I've almost made it to 85, never been in a hospital. Never, not once. And I almost made it to 85, almost. I better knock wood here.
Yeah.
Uh, no medicine, zero, not a thing.
Good for
So
you. Amazing. And I wish you, God willing, many, many more years
well,
of
I'm
health
so
and
grateful
happiness.
for you, and I'm so happy that you're doing a show like this. It's important, and I'm glad you had me on, but more importantly, I'm glad you're doing it. So keep up the good work, Patricia.
Thank you. And Julian, thank you so much for your time and joining me here today. And you can get Julian Schlossberg's book, Try Not to Hold It Against Me, A Producer's Life, on Amazon, all the usual online channels. There's an audiobook version, which he recorded himself. And again, thank you, Julian. I wish you the best. Thank you so much for joining us here at It's Okay to Be Old. And for more information about me and the show, you can reach out at www.patriciagreenberg.com. Thanks again, and stay well and stay safe.